Hi, everyone. This is Freedom Unfolding. Welcome to our episode number 4. We are here collectively to join with you and meet the moment of where we're at. Our intention was to read our Welcoming the New letters. However, we felt as a group that it was important to be in the flow of the moment, to be present and aware and have a conscious conversation with integrity and alignment around what is happening in the world right now. When we originally had filmed the segment and created the schedule, we didn't realize that the world was going to have an uprising and a revolution and an explosion of what is important. And at the same time, we are honoring, respecting, and recognizing how synchronistic it is with the episode 3 that we did, releasing and letting go of the old paradigm, that the old paradigm has now presented us with a bunch of examples for the things that we are not wanting and the things we are really wanting to let go of. So what will follow is a very open, organic flow conversation where we're just going to discuss the topic of race, the topic of injustice and oppression, and our own experiences with that in the moment and how we are regulating, how we are honoring our systems, how we are doing our best to show up, and what we can do individually and collectively to support the movement.
Thank you. And I would like to start our conversation off with an acknowledgement that I feel I can probably share with a lot of folks who are not people of color. In that, I'm a white person who recognizes my privilege, and I want to contribute. And at the same time, I have a fear of any way that I can contribute has a high chance of being misread or being misunderstood, because there is such a filter right now of all of the ugliness of centuries of oppression that's coming up to the surface. So I haven't said much of anything. And in part because I have been told by people of color that the best thing that I can do is listen, and that I am totally willing to do, to take a step back and just listen. And at the same time, there is a frustration because although I acknowledge that listening is of the utmost importance, it doesn't feel like it's enough. And I personally feel very powerless to help initiate change because it just feels like it's so big. I see around me and I think that most of what everybody really wants right now with a pandemic and with social unrest is to feel safe. And yet at the same time, freedom has never been a safe thing to claim. And when any of us, any one of us, or any group within the collective does not have the birthright to be free, none of us are truly free. So these are just some of my thoughts, and I'd like to just kind of open it up to feedback and thought from the collective, especially from Mel, as to what are we supposed to do? What's next? And how do we regain freedom for all with the least casualties in the most peaceful way?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. You hit a lot of points. One I'll talk about, I did mention, I'm like, I don't like being in the limelight. Not that I'm quiet or shy. It's just that I kind of just want to sit back and observe. But I feel like it's time to speak out, and the teaching and the learning, and teaching is one of my favorite things to do, and it's one of my gifts as well. So I feel like that's something that I need to do. Yeah, I feel like when I walk into a room and I immediately scan the room, it's just, can't even help it. It's just, I'm all like, are there any other Black people here? And, 9 times out of 10, I'm usually the only Black one in the room. And sometimes you just want to see a friend, not a friendly face, I won't say that, but just like a familiar face, like one that's the same color as you, just to kind of feel like, okay, well, how do I have to show up? Do I have to show up like the restricted? And when I say restricted, there's some times where I have to kind of bring my attitude down, or do I have to show up like, okay, I can be regular, I can be just myself? And it's different when I walk into a room. I was talking to a friend yesterday who's also Black, and she's just like, when you're Black, you have to be twice as good as everybody else in the room for people just to think that you're supposed to be where you're at. And I say that because I've been in corporate America, and for me to get up to the ladder, like I had to actually like tone it down and say yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and all of these things just to make it up the ladder. Because if I had any kind of attitude or emotion, I immediately got pegged as an angry Black woman, and then I wasn't going to go anywhere. And I'm all like, I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. There's a difference. So so I was so tired of corporate America. I'm all like, oh my gosh, like I literally had to have people step up for me. I used to be a trainer, and I used to travel quite a bit. And I remember going to a very small town in the middle, I think it was North Carolina. I walk in the room, to an all white room, and it's a white town where there are no other Black people. And so then you see me walking in to train these people for the next 2 months, and everybody's looking at me like, hey, is there anybody else coming with you? And I'm all like, nope, 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 it's just me. And so then I immediately had to know I had to be on. So yeah, it's a huge weight to carry. And I remember a friend of mine who was also a trainer, and they didn't dress up. They kind of just dressed, in like slacks or whatever. And I always wore a suit. And they go, what? We're not required to wear a suit. Why do you wear one? I go, because when I walk into the room, people look at me different. And if I don't step into that room looking like I'm supposed to be in a 3-piece suit, they're immediately going to look at me and not respect me. So in order for me to have the respect and to claim the classroom that I'm teaching in, I have to dress this way. I would never show up any other way. They go, well, that's silly. And I go, it is, but it's my reality. So the weight that is carried, I'm like, well, it's just, I kind of just am used to carrying that weight on my shoulders. And yeah. It's sometimes I'm just like, can I just be? So when I go hang out with Black people, I'm all like, oh, I don't have to be on. Thank goodness. I can just kind of like be myself. And that's sad, but it's the reality, and yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for letting me share. Yeah. By the way, I'm open to questions. If you guys have any, I did this on, live earlier yesterday and today, and opened up the doors for questions, concerns, emotional outbursts.
Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I feel like there's a lot of, like we were talking about before, there's just, there's so much in the world that is happening that's really like from trauma response. And a lot of the time from systematic abuse is what it really is in so many ways. And I'm not, obviously like there's this, like the race topic is very up, and there's a lot of other things, and a lot of stuff came up with COVID, and there's just stuff coming up all the time, right? Like the media is always bringing in some type of thing that we need to be worried about and be in fear of and be in fear over. And I feel like it's this, like when I heard you talking about all the weight and like having to carry that around and having to show up and be, you know, twice as like much, twice as good, you know, twice as on point as any white person would have to be in a white room, right? Or in a white demographic, a white crowd. And it being part of your reality. And, you know, that's just how it is. Like, I feel like that is a truth that a lot of people are just starting to wake up to, hopefully. But it's like this perfect, I've thought for a long time, I wish there was like a bigger or a more pressing dialogue over race and trauma, because it is very, very real and very deeply rooted. And like that is, you know, in a form, until we realize that there's a lot of disassociation that's going on, where people don't even realize how deeply it has like hurt, you know, or it's impacted them in the weight that they're having to carry because they're a person of color. And that's just life every day in the US, you know, or even a lot of other places in the world too. I'm not saying it's only the US, but it's like, you know, of course there's anger and riots and all this stuff, you know, like, of course it's happening. And no, nobody really wants it to happen, but what else, you know, what's it going to take, right? And there's all this anger and rage because, you know, a lot of the time that's what happens when we start to grieve. We go through the stages, and anger's a big part of that.
Yeah.
You know, that's my own like perception and perspective, at least. But
yeah, you talked about the like what's even happening in other countries, and so I used to be a missionary overseas. And when I was in corporate America, I went over to the Philippines, and then I got to go over there as a missionary. But it's something about the darker skin for whatever reason. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Philippines before, but you know, Filipinos are somewhat dark skinned, but not all that much. A lot of people mistake them with the Latin community. But there are like some super dark Filipinos, and I will never forget the first time I went to the Philippines and I walked into the grocery store and I went through the health and beauty aisle, and there is an entire aisle dedicated to skin whitening products. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what is going on? And so I was out there teaching for the corporate America company I used to work with. And I was out there in the Philippines for like 2 months. And so I had an entire room, you know, of classroom of Filipino people that I was teaching sales to. And I would start to look at some of them, and they had like this skin coming apart, like around the edges of their face. And so I was there a couple of months, so I started to befriend them, and we go out on the weekends and stuff. And I finally asked them, when I go, why does everybody have like this discoloration around the edges of their skin? And they go, oh, you know, miss, it's because if you have lighter skin, you're more likely to get hired at the hotels. And the hotels in the Philippines were where you made the money, because it was like in Manila. And I was like, what? They go, yeah, you know, if you are not beautiful and you're not white skin, then they're not going to hire you. And so we have to bleach our skin. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So it's not just dark skin in America. It's dark skin in the Philippines, and I'm sure some other countries as well. And I was like, that just broke my heart. Like, here I am having this problem in the US, and I go to the Philippines and they have the same issue, because you cannot have darker skin. Otherwise, you can get a job, but the job will be like out in the fields or somewhere out in the sun or somewhere cleaning up. Like, you were never going to be customer facing if you had darker skin, and customer facing jobs paid the most. And I was like, wow. That, and there was a billboard, I remember, and it was one of those products, and it actually had like a white face person, and then it had like a black face person, and it said go from this to this with this product. And I was like, yeah, here I thought I had it bad. That doesn't happen here, but it happens, and it's just, it's normal. It's normal. I was like, yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Mel, because I think that people don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a social responsibility. And at the same time, I understand that if you don't have exposure to that, you just are not aware of it. And so I think it's so important to create space for people of color, people who are in situations where they cannot be themselves, to say, this is my reality every day, day in and day out. This is what I have to do to be accepted and make it. And I think that that's something that people who have the reality where they don't have to do that cannot understand it really fully, because you're not living it. We can have compassion and we can have a relatable experience as a woman or as someone who's disabled, or whatever your thing that you've had, whatever trauma that you've had, you can relate to injustice and oppression and enslavement in other areas. And I think that that speaks to a very systemic disease that is deeper rooted, and it's creating symptoms in every area of our existence. It's like I have like an image of just like pollution from deep within coming up, and people are having to live in the toxicity to just breathe through their life. And it feels so emotional because it's so unfair that that's even a thing that we all have to stand up and be present to. And yet we have to, because that's what happens when we're not. It keeps getting swept under the rug. And that's why we've had this for such a long time. Even though it's super difficult to not dissociate and check out and just be like, I can't handle this, we have to try to listen and be compassionate and meet people honoring the reality that they are telling us is true for them. And if somebody tells us something, you know, when white people or people of privilege, the majority, the 1%, people who don't have any experience to relate to, they just don't understand, I'm not sure how to get them to understand, because there's nothing for them to pull from to even meet somebody there. So my hope is that that innate intelligence within each of us, I have to trust that the infinite being, the essence, the compassion that lives in all of us will somehow fight its way to the surface, so that we can hear people and honor their reality of what's going on. Even if we don't know how to make it different, we have to at least honor that it's happening. And I'm glad, I'm devastated by everything that's happening with rioting and people getting hurt and people getting killed in the name of trying to affect change. But I'm also grateful that there's people out there that have the courage to do that, because it does feel unsafe and it does feel scary. And the only time that we ever got revolution, we had as a humanity had to put ourselves in an unsafe, scary situation to grab it. It's never been given to us. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that people of color, people who are fighting, people who are having conversation are even willing to stand up and say, I don't know the right thing, but I'm still standing here with you. And I don't know what else I can do from my own perspective other than to be present to what's real and what's actually happening.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. I agree with you. I hate that cities are being destroyed, but you're right. It's like nothing major ever changed. And so you have to burn it down to build it back up. I feel like that's what's happening.
I have a question too on that, Mark. Like, so far we've talked about folks who are engaging, and that the violence coming from a place of desperation. And, you know, I'm from Minneapolis. That's my hometown. So it breaks my heart to see buildings that I recognize and not know if people that, that I know and people that I love are safe. But what I'm getting from eyewitness accounts from people that I know from Minneapolis, and I've heard rumors that this is happening other places too, is an appropriation of these initiatives, whether or not they're peaceful or not, by those who value hate and hold hate as a personal value. So what I'm hearing is white supremacists and even corrupt cops inciting violence. And that in this way, I feel that those who are holding a counter perspective to unification, to progressiveness, to equal rights, those who do not hold those things as values are actually appropriating for their own cause of hate, to perpetuate the myth of the quote unquote savage Black folk. And this greatly concerns me, because something that I've given this a lot of thought, because I'm like, this didn't just pop out of nowhere, this appropriation. This has been something that's been going on for a really long time. That those who, and I'm seeing this as like a pattern, like in all oppressed groups actually, that there is another group who somehow holds a vested interest in keeping that group oppressed and controlled. And they will take whatever initiative, whether or not it's peaceful or not, and they twist it and perverse it to their own hateful ends. So I've been given this a lot of thought, because my thought is like, there's got to be a more strategic way to where we can work together to somehow circumvent the possibility that the initiatives and the movements, whether or not they're peaceful or not, could be somehow hijacked by those who have a vested interest in control or oppression of another group. This is something I'm really concerned about, because if we're going to be burning down our cities to create a movement, then by God, they don't get that. People who have hate in their hearts, they do not have the right to hijack the initiative. I have empathy for those who are acting out of desperation. I get that. What I do not have empathy for is those who are coming in and on their own just being violent just to promote violence, just to promote hate, or to promote their own hateful agenda, so that they can somehow twist the circumstances so that they can shine a light on a specific group saying, see, we're right. This group deserves to be oppressed and controlled because somehow they're less than another group. So I would love, I don't expect us to have the answers. Like, I know we don't have the answers, but I would like maybe some brainstorming on what are some other ways besides even peaceful protesting, because even those are getting hijacked, where we can protect the movements that we are creating from piracy. Because that's what it is. They're pirates. They're social movement pirates. They're coming in with their bricks, and they're coming in with their bombs, and they are twisting the certain circumstances for their own agenda. So how do we protect our movements from piracy?
You're right. First of all, the fact that it's being hijacked. It's not a coincidence that Black people have always been poverty stricken or uneducated and always ended up jail. And so I believe that the system obviously has continued to try to keep us down. So protesting may work, and that's an option, but there's a woman I follow on Instagram, and she mentioned this. She's a Black woman, an astrologer, total spiritual healer, and she said this, and it made me think, and it's when my shift happened too, is that Black people have it in their minds that they're never going to make it, especially if you grew up in a poverty-stricken home or in an area like I did in LA. You're never going to get out. You're never going to be anything. It's just teachers don't have to tell you that. You just believe that this is all that there's going to be and there's no way out. And she said something that made me think, like, this is the way. If we can teach us, like Black people, how to heal ourselves and heal the trauma that we've gone through and change our mindset so that we're not showing up arrogant, but showing up like, I can make it. I can become something. I can be educated. Like, that's not the norm. Like, I was in high school thinking, like, if I went to college, no big deal. If I don't, it was just like, I'll work my way up the ladder. It's like, we don't have that in our minds, like we're going to make it, that we aren't oppressed, that we can get out of poverty, that we'll never live, not by paycheck to paycheck, and that we'll have the, husband and kids and the white picket fence. Like, we just don't think that way, and it's sad. And so I believe that if we can infiltrate what's happening, like if the system is trying to keep us down, then we need to infiltrate it from the inside and give everybody the tools so that they can go inside and realize who they truly are. Because on the outside, that's not going to work. Like, even in the spiritual world, like, it teaches us, like, go inside, connect to yourself, connect to source. That's where it starts. And so if we can give Black people these tools, then whatever happens on the outside it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter, because we know ourselves inside, who we are, and we can stand firm and we can stand strong. Because I don't think that that's ever going to change. I don't know if it's ever going to change. It's changed a little bit, but look at what slavery was like 400 years ago, and we're a little bit closer. Like, that's sad. Like, my mom grew up in the 50s, and back then people were segregated in certain parts of the world, and that wasn't that long ago. That was like, I don't do math, so you guys have to figure it out, but you know what I'm saying. It's like that my mom's still alive, so that wasn't that long ago. And I'm all like, we've like moved an inch. We've moved, so I'm hopeful, but we've also just only moved an inch, So it's like, yeah. I really think that we need to be given the tools and the resources. Black people do not have tools and resources. They talked about it in COVID, like when they ran the stats, like Black people who were the ones who were being most affected because they couldn't afford to go to the hospitals. I'm all like, I'm like, first of all, how can a virus attack a race? It's not attacking a race, but yet again, it is, because if a certain race doesn't have access to health care, then I guess it is attacking a race.
What other kind of tools and resources do you feel would make the biggest difference?
Um,
You mentioned healthcare and access, obviously, to
healthcare.
those kind of basic things. What other kind of tools and resources? Because you were mentioning both external and internal resources.
The internal for sure, like even what our show represents and some of the tools that we've already delivered, like until I started going to the healing arts school, I never even really thought about, emotional regulation. And I'd been through healing before, but like Black people can't have emotions because then it's like, you're too much because, you don't know how to hold it in, so it's like, and I'll put my mom on blast. She'll kill me if she ever hears this. But I was taking her through yoga nidra, because I had practicums and I was trying to call everybody. And, one of the questions says, what's your stress level? And her stress level, she said, 10 being the highest. And she's like, oh, it's like at a 2. And I'm all like, the hell it is. My mom has so many health issues. She has arthritis. She had knee in one or surgery in one knee. That still doesn't work. Now she's about to have surgery in the next knee, and it's stressing her out because she hates going to the doctor. She really hates the dentist. Like she has all this trauma related to like her health. And arthritis is basically, it's not like it's not a physical thing. It's like she's holding these emotions that she hasn't processed in her body, and it's affecting her body. And so when she said her stress level was at 2, and I was like, no, it's not. So, and it made me think, like, I didn't even realize stress, like I was stressed. Because in the Black community, you're taught to like keep going because you don't have time to feel the emotions because you have to work 3 jobs. You have to work to get off food stamps. You have to work to get out of the ghetto and the hood. And like, who has time to regulate their emotions when you're trying to put food on the table? And so you don't even recognize when the stress kicks in, when the triggers kick in. And so it triggered something in my mom, like she has no idea. So I had to facilitate questions like, okay, well, how do you feel when you go to the doctor? Well, I don't like going. Does it stress you out? Yeah, I guess it does. And I'm like, but these are the steps that people have to take because you don't realize what you're actually going through because no one's ever taken the time to point out to you that that's stress. Like, defining what stress is, is the key. And so the tools that you asked about, I'm all like just education on, starting with emotional regulation. I mean, the list can go on, but that's just one because, Black people don't go to counselors or psychologists or life coaches. Like half of my family was just like, what's a life coach? Just like, yeah, those aren't things that you don't go to external resources. You go to church. That's what you do. Yeah. Jesus fixes everything. Still love my dude. And let's give you some other tools,
Thank you, Mel. I appreciate that insight, and that helps me understand a little bit of like what maybe would make a difference. I also have a wonderment around like supporting our small local communities. So much we have been like dependent on like the corporations and like federal government and things of that nature. And we talk about local businesses and how supporting local businesses then creates like a micro economy. I wonder if potentially creating movements, having resources, both financially as well as otherwise, that can help build more of those micro economies where we have small businesses and small communities that are thriving and committed to doing business with one another. The reason why I'm wondering about this is because before World War II, when Germany went through such a deep depression, one of the communities that fared the best was the Jewish community. And that was specifically because they banded together and supported one another and supported each other's businesses and such. And quite frankly, it's one of the reasons why they were hated. And, we know how all that panned out. But I'm taking from that and thinking to myself, well, you know, our global economy is collapsing. We can no longer rely on the federal government, that's for damn sure. And our environment, who knows what's going to happen with that? And those who are going to be the most affected by all this collapse are those who have the least to begin with. So it seems to me that it makes sense to start bringing the energy back and start going back to our basics, which is starting to support each other in creating these like microeconomic communities, so that we're not reliant upon big corporations or the federal government and the services that they provide as much as we typically would be. What are your thoughts on the role that could play in potentially giving more resources to minorities of all kinds?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Resources are important. Along with resources, I think there need to be education on how to effectively use those resources, because it's like, if you're going to give somebody, $1 million, teach them how to use that $1 million. It's like if you're going to give them a house, teach them how to clean it, and keep it, it's like, so as much as I am proud to be a Black woman and love my community, we don't always have the best education on how to care for what's given to us. And so I think that is important when handing out the resources, because it could just completely just go to the wayside. And a financial advisor of mine, he's not my financial advisor, he's a friend of mine who's a financial advisor, a Black man, and I'm partnering with him. At one point this will happen, but he wanted to bring me in to train people, because he was going to be able to secure housing loans for people of color to buy houses. And I'm all out like, that's great. I don't think I ever wanted to own a house, because that's not something my mom ever did, or anybody in my family ever owned a house. We always rented. And so I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I'm all like, what? Yeah, we do need houses. And he's just like, but I want to bring you in to have you train them on how to continue to maintain this loan that we're about to give them for this house, because if not, then payments will be going unmade. And so I feel like the Black community unfortunately doesn't have the education to know how not to go into financial ruin, because we were never given it. Like, my credit was ruined when I was 18, because I was never taught, well, what do I need credit for, and why is it important? And those are not things and it's generational, I'm not saying we're all like that, but the typical Black person doesn't have that education. So along with those resources, we need to educate people. So it's not like you can just like, how people donate and you go to Goodwill and you just want to give somebody like, oh, here are all my old shirts. It's just like, well, no, you need to get involved. And how can I help put these away? And who are these going to? It's like, so if we're going to do that with the Black community, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort, and everybody, you can't just throw money at it. You have to get involved. You have to educate. And I think that's some of the things that are missing in our community. And you mentioned the Jewish community, and I think that that's true on how they internally kind of built up their own, but like they are also educated, so, and I'm not saying all Black people are uneducated, but there are some things that we just don't know how to do. So supporting Black business, there was a feed going around about what you can do, 75 things that you can do to help the Black community. And I'm like, who has time to read 75 things? So I just scanned through it. And I saw one that says support Black business. And so, whenever I see someone, like the mask I brought was a guy on the corner in Walgreens who was a Black man. And I was like, let me just go support him. So I brought some masks. I go because I want to support people of color, and especially entrepreneurs. And so that's one of the things. One of the things on that list was to like go and put your money in a Black owned bank. Maybe not all of your money, but like open a small savings account or something like that. Those are some things that we can do. I'm a part of several different Black entrepreneurial groups, and the emails have been flying around, not emails, the posts have been flying around. Who has this type of business? Who has this type of business? I just responded to one today. It's like, we want to put on a sip and paint and yoga. And I was just like, I'm a yoga teacher. You know, it's like, so we are organizing. So know that it's happening. You guys don't know that because you're not in the Black group, but I'm just letting you know it is happening. But your support is also welcomed, you know. So yeah, that was a
Thank
long way to
you.
answer that question.
No,
So
but that makes me feel a little bit more hopeful,
yeah.
because like I expressed before we started recording, like how powerless I feel, because although listening is important, it's like I want to do more than that. So that's a good reminder. Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to touch on too is because you said with the executives and me being in corporate America, and I realized this when I started to get different jobs, and especially when I was in full-time ministry. It's like, you know, I was always that token person, and they would bring me in, and more Black people would show up, and they go like, "You're our good luck, you know, the diversity grows when you show up." And I was like, okay. I'm all like, well, why don't you just hire Black people? Like, if you want to diversify your company, don't wait for one to walk in the door, like, and be intentional about it. Like, go get one and now you're diverse. You know, it's like, if you want people of color and white people to know how it is to work with other Black people, put a Black person on staff. Don't have them cleaning the bathrooms. Obviously, we do more than that. Don't have them out doing maintenance. We've got gifts, we've got talents, we've got skills. You don't know that until you talk to us. I'm also, it's not rocket science. If you want to diversify, hire diversity. Like,
Yeah, you want to diversify? Do it.
yeah.
Do it.
I really
Yeah.
honor too, like, I feel like what I hear from Mel is there's an undertone, and she spoke to it earlier, of needing people to believe in that, just what you just said, that Black people and people of color and minorities have more to offer than what they've been given the opportunity to offer. And there's also an awareness that you brought to our attention that sometimes Black people don't believe that they have any other way or any other choice or the option to reach for more. And so I think that that's another tool and way for all of us individually to show up differently by changing our own mindset, and then having that mindset allow us to interact with the world around us in a different way. Because holding the intention, like, I know in our group, I'll share this with the audience, like with everyone, like our group, whenever we're going through a struggle, we say to each other, what intention can I hold for you? How can I support you in that? Let me know what you need. And so if we can hold the intention individually and collectively to believe in people of color to have more than they ever had, and to have that opportunity, and to have their own mindset be healed from the trauma that created the belief that there's no opportunity to own a house, that there's no time to regulate your emotions, that there's no space to have emotions. Like, all those things are real. And I feel like what I'm hearing too is that it's based on little t and big T traumas that just multiply over time. And then you just get to a point where you're like, this is just how it is living Black in America. That's just my life. And there's no space for anyone to think or consider anything different, because you're just trying to survive in it. And so I think that for each of us, our individual mission, if you want to do something, I think that the power of our intention and our literally being very honest with ourselves, with conscious awareness and presence to our own thought system and our own way of interacting with the world, I think a lot of us would realize that we don't move through the world in a very equal way. We want to, consciously, like on a surface level, of course we want to, but there's systemic things that have happened where we've been brought up not to do that, not to be honoring of people of color. And so I think it's important that each of us take on the pressure and the responsibility of evaluating your own system of thought, your own belief system, and getting really honest and being willing to say, yeah, I have not always been the person to believe in my brothers and sisters of color. I have not always been the person to stand up when I knew something wasn't right. And I've not always been the person to support Black business or to cultivate a belief mindset and holding of space of people. And I think it's okay that we acknowledge that in ourselves, not from a place of guilt and shame, but just a place of we're part of the problem, of our own belief system is part of the problem, and acknowledging that belief system came from how we were raised too. Just how the structure of society created our conscious mind. And that's why, like, when we do, like, there's a few of us in this group that are hypnotherapists, and when you dig down into deep root trauma shit, you're like, I had no idea that I was working off that trauma loop. I had no idea that that one sensitizing event has created my behavior up until this point, and that it's been damaging to those around me. And I think that this is the same type of thing that we need to look at, and how are we in small ways also not honoring people of color, and how can we change our own mindset. And if we, enough of us do, I think it will create a new system from the ground up, and that will create space and opportunity for bigger things to happen. Because I don't know if we can tackle it from above. It has to be from below, like the root of it. Or because all this above work with the fires and the riots and the piracy and people stealing and greed and injustice, it's like it's not working up here. We have to go in and down, deeper rooted, and start from the ground up internally, and then hold space for there to be a different way.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you. And something that's kind of been culminating for me this whole time is, we're talking a lot about trauma, obviously, that goes on in the Black community, and the rage, and, what must be hardwired into the DNA there. And also, when Sarah's referring to, like, going in and doing the work, being willing to show up and maybe admit, to ask yourself, like, could I be wrong? Is there another way I can see this? Can I see this with a softer heart or more open mind? Whatever that might be. But a really potent consideration is to consider, individuals that commit really atrocious crimes, they really have to have this level of disassociation. Because if we were connected fully to our bodies and our emotions and our nervous system and all of the resources, we really kind of, are really all of the those things that go on in our system when we're operating at a healthy level, we kind of commit those atrocious crimes and really live with ourselves. So it would kind of eat us alive. And so, I have this belief, and epigenetics really fully supports this theory that as a collective, like African Americans, kind of carry that trauma. I really feel like white people carry some trauma in a way too, is in terms of the disassociation from the atrocious acts of horror that were committed against people of color. And I feel like this is a really potent invitation to understand it from a place of trauma, and to understand that when we're disassociated, we're in this place of, I can't admit that because that's gonna, it's gonna compete with my perspective of the world and how I'm safe and who I am in terms of my relationship with that potential. And I promise you that when we can intentionally and mindfully go in and try to just just soften into the potentiality that we could be wrong and that maybe we might be disassociated and unwilling to admit that all of these Black lives that have been saying for generations that these incredible things, these incredible atrocious crimes are still being committed, and all this systematic oppression that is happening, that maybe it's true. And I'll give you a perspective because I do understand it. That used to be me. I actually used to think there's no way I'm racist. I'm friends with all these people of color, and I certainly wasn't racist. I was definitely a bigot. And I'll give you an example. I really thought I had those colorblind glasses on. And it was unhelpful. And I realized that when I was hanging out with my friends of color, that we would get confronted by the police officers all the time. And in addition to that, I would never be the one to get in trouble. So if they were getting handcuffed and taken away from us having alcohol underage or pot, that they were the ones getting in trouble. I never did. When I was with my white friends, we got in trouble equally. And the same when I dated, actually my oldest son is biracial. And, when I dated men of color, I can't tell you how many different, men that were white told me I deserved better. And in some cases I did, and it wasn't because of the color of their skin. I was never told that when I was dating a white man from somebody that didn't really know me. And I heard that from police officers. I heard that from bosses, in some ways, from women in my own family. And I just want to loop back to just that the invitation is to understand this is, just a couple layers of realization that I've had that kind of helped me to realize, I really don't know. And I realize that I will never know. And the little bit of awareness that I have is simply from walking alongside some people of color that are really dear to me and that I love. But yeah, just the invitation to ask yourself, is it possible that I may be disassociated from some type of truth because it might compete with my perspective of the world and who I am? And I promise, every time we heal something like that, it can be incredibly helpful, not just to the other person, but more so even to us. And then at that point, all lives can matter. And so, yeah, I just want to thank you ladies for working with me, and especially for Mel in this very big space that she's holding today.
Thanks for sharing that, Jillian. You got definitely a taste firsthand of what it's like to be Black in America, just being present and witness to it. And I shared this on my social media earlier just because of all of the, problems I had growing up as a Black kid in LA. I never liked the cops. I still, till this day, cringe. And the last time I got pulled over, my immediate response was to put my hands on the dashboard so that they know that I was not a threat. That's like today. But I've always had to watch myself, and I'll share this story just to kind of close this out. But when I was in high school, I grew up in LA, in particular Long Beach, and there's a lot of Black people there. And I went to not really a predominantly Black high school, but a lot of Black people. But, I'm like 15, 16, and there's not a lot to do after a certain time of the night. I think it was like 8 or 9, everything shuts down. And so me and friends were walking down the beach because we grew up in Long Beach, and it was like maybe 10 or 15 of us. And we're just we don't have anywhere else to go. So we're just walking on the beach. And before you knew it, there were cops driving on the sand, and that came in front of us. They came from behind us, probably about 4 troopers in front and 4 behind. And then there were helicopters, and everybody jumped out of the car with dogs and rifles and set everybody on the ground. And I was like, what the hell? And so you just kind of what to do when you're in LA. You get on your knees, you put your hands behind your head. And I'll never forget, it was like it was yesterday. and I was on my knees, hands behind my head, and I could tell it was a rookie because they were super young, no hair on their face, and they had a rifle pointed right at my face. And I'm like, if I even wiggle my nose, like, this person could automatically think I'm a threat and pull the trigger. But that's the reality that I grew up in, was just like, don't move because someone's going to shoot you. And I will just remember thinking to myself and praying, like, oh my God, please don't shoot me. Just, I'm not moving. And they went through probably like half of us frisking us before they realized that we were just kids on the beach, nothing else to do, not a threat, and let us go. But I'm all like, why put us through that trauma? Like, no one was doing anything. We were just walking down the beach, and unfortunately that'll probably stay with me the rest of my life. And I don't, I'm not saying I'm going to spit at the cops or anything like that, but there's this serious fear that I have whenever I encounter one, because I'm all, are you going to think I'm a threat? And so Black men are getting killed, but Black people, period, have always been the target for the cops, especially in LA. And so, I hope that'll change one day. We'll see. Maybe this revolution that's starting to rise will bring it to light. And so, yeah, I thank all of you guys for sharing, and super just grateful to be a part of this group and to be able to have this discussion with you guys. And, for everybody else out there, it doesn't have to be an angry conversation. You can, be able to be peaceful and listen to each other and share and things like that. And so, yeah, thanks everyone.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this very potent and powerful conversation. We are honoring all the voices that have been expressed. We are allowing for there to be space for everyone to be heard and seen in this conversation. We also wanted to acknowledge that in the coming weeks, you can catch us every Thursday for our podcast. We are dedicated and committed to showing up, to being present for the conversation, giving valuable tools to neutralize the chaos. And in the moment, whenever it is right and feels resonant, we will present our welcoming in the new letters. Just rest assured that we have a trust and a belief that the new paradigm is coming, and we trust that there is a way to build a foundation of unity and coherence and connectedness, and we will show up for that when the timing feels right to present the welcoming the new letters. So we encourage you to reach out to us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have a LinkedIn account. We also have an email that you can reach out privately if that feels right for you. Thank you for listening. Join our community every Thursday at 3:33 Arizona time to find your truth, find your voice, and find your freedom. We are Freedom Unfolding.